There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Hey everybody, Logan with Sweetfish here. Before we jump in today, I wanted to let you know about another podcast you might enjoy full of sales-focused episodes. If you're a regular listener of B2B Growth, you'll probably enjoy the Modern Sales Podcast with Liston Witherell. Check out their episode, Value-Based Selling Done Right. You can find Modern Sales Podcast wherever you do your listening. All right, let's get into the show. Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. I'm joined today by Shirnett Fleet. She is the Chief Marketing Officer over at Uniworld River Cruises. Shirnett, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to be talking about a shift that you guys made in recent years, going after a new demographic. You know, we've talked about category creation. We've talked about breaking into new markets. I think you're going to add a different perspective based on some of the things that you guys have gone through as a brand here in recent years. Before we jump straight into that, though, Shirnett, I would love for you to give a little bit of context for listeners. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you and your team have been up to these days.
Sure. So, like you mentioned, I head up marketing for Uniworld River Cruises. You know, if you've never heard of Uniworld, we are unarguably the most luxurious river cruise line on the rivers. We've been on the rivers for over 40 years. We cruise all over the world: Europe, Africa, Asia, India. We are everywhere. We're fairly well established. We tend to go after an older audience, more of a baby boomer. So I head up marketing for Uniworld globally. We've got a team here in Los Angeles, California, and we've got teams all over the world who help us market to not only consumers, but actually for Uniworld, about a good 80% or so of our bookings actually come through travel advisors, travel agents. So a lot of the marketing that we do and the relationships that we build are with those travel advisors so that they can in turn sell it to their customers. We've got a smaller sister brand that I'll talk about a little bit called U River Cruises. And this is really what I'm going to talk about most today. U River Cruises was a new brand that we introduced about 3 years ago. And really the idea is it is a brand meant for a new generation of travelers, really going after the older millennials and the Gen X travelers who haven't even thought about a river cruise as a possible vacation idea, but it's such a great fit for them. So I'm now also been heading up that brand. That's been a lot of work launching a brand new brand, kind of a brand new category for a new audience. So we've been really busy with that over the last 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great segue into our conversation today of, entering an untapped market. We've got an entire series dedicated to category creation and category design here on B2B Growth. And I think a lot of those episodes have been very valuable in thinking about, the overall positioning, the way that you go to market. In this case, you guys aren't introducing a new concept or introducing a new category, but you are introducing a category that the buyers that you're going after, this demographic of older millennials and Gen Xers, that they're not actively thinking about. So as you guys launched this brand and you looked at how do we not just go after somewhere where there is established demand, but we're bringing a new category to market in some form or fashion. What were some of the things that went through your mind and informed your approach in the early days?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, it was about 3 years ago in 2017 that really our leadership team started to realize that, and let me actually take a step back there. to give you some context, our company is owned by a larger travel company, a family-owned travel company called the Travel Corporation. They own about 42 different travel brands, all different types of travel brands. So there's a wealth of knowledge and experience in that team. One of the companies that our parent company owns is called Kentucky. Kentucky does trips for adults age 18 to 35. It's more considered like youth travel all over the world. And one of the things that we saw from the feedback from those guests, when you ask them, where do they want to travel next? What do they want to do next? Oftentimes they would indicate that they wanted to do a cruise. So we knew that there was some appetite out there for cruise. We also had our experience just operating a cruise line for over 40 years. And realized that, all of the benefits of taking a cruise, getting into these great like European small towns and iconic cities, the ease of it, traveling all over, but only needing to unpack once, and just the intimacy and the immersiveness of the excursions that you get to do when you're on the rivers, we realized that those are all things that younger travelers are looking for. Yet nobody in this space was going after those travelers with river cruise. And so we married our experience from Uniworld, and took also our experience from our sister brands like a Kentucky and said, we can actually we're in a great space to create this new product that has a more of a cooler, kind of a cooler factor to it, just a little bit more modern and contemporary that really speaks to the younger audience, but, bring to life our knowledge on the rivers. And so that's really how the whole idea was born. No one else was doing it. So it was an exciting idea, but we also realized it was a big kind of hill ahead of us, because to do that, you've got to not only create a whole new the product itself has to be right for that audience. And then also you have to build awareness of the category. So it was a bit of an uphill battle, but we felt like the reward would definitely be there if we worked hard at it.
Yeah. So I imagine we're going to be talking a lot about, brand building in this conversation, because again, you're not going after a mature market where the demand generation strategies that we all employ are necessarily going to just work right out of the gate. I imagine there's some trial and error, and there's some trying to figure out, how do we raise brand awareness? How do we establish our brand with this new segment of buyers that don't know us from Adam? What were some of the things that you thought about there in the actual tactics of building a brand and building awareness to a brand new audience, of where I imagine you and your team first thought of, okay, where do we start in some of those early conversations? Okay, we're doing this, we're building a product. How are we going to take this to market?
Absolutely. So I think there's two key things there. I think number one is you've got to figure out, what is this brand going to be about? What it's going to stand for? What's the brand's identity, personality? What that was. We were starting from zero and going up from there. And so, which was very exciting as a marketer to get to build a brand from scratch. So for that process, it's interesting. I'll be honest here, I actually leaned on some of my past experience. Many, many years ago, I worked for Virgin. People know and love the Virgin brand. It's just a really kind of cool and sexy and irreverent brand. And it just felt right away that, wow, this brand and the way we were kind of approaching the design of the ships was meant to be kind of modern and cool and sexy. So we definitely leaned on that a little bit for inspiration. So that was number one, is really establishing, what is this personality? What is this going to brand be about and stand for? The other part of it then, again, is the awareness. How do you build the awareness about this brand and the category? Coming from Uniworld, I don't know if people realize this, but the cruise industry is still one of those industries where the majority of bookings go through travel advisors, or they go through third parties. It could be a travel advisor. It can be an OTA. So that's an online travel agent, like an online booking engine, right? Like a Travelocity or Expedia. People may book through, like Costco is a great example, right? People book through Costco Travel. They may book through their credit card, like their Platinum Amex card holder, and they book that way. We work with all of those partners. So, part of it was, you got to train all of those third-party partners and teach them about the brand. You have to educate them. You have to make sure they understand how this experience is so vastly different from any other cruise line out there. So that was a big part of it. And it was just teaching them about the brand, teaching them how to sell it too, right? So this is not a typical river cruise product. So one of the things our partners really needed our help with was teaching them who their best clients were for this product. There was a lot of education that we've had to, a lot of training that we've had to do with our partners of, you need to match the right person with this right product, because it's very different than anything else that's out there. And then finally, part of it too is especially when you're introducing a new product, a new brand, a new category, is just pure awareness, consumer awareness. So while we still rely heavily on our third-party partners to actually help us with bookings, it's on us to help build that awareness of the actual brand itself. So we have committed quite a bit of money to building awareness directly with consumers. We've tested a lot of different things. So that's in the last 3 years. It's all been about testing, learning, and adapting. But it's really about, driving that awareness. So when someone is ready to book their travel experience, they have top of mind, oh, what about you, River Cruises? I've heard about that. That's a really cool brand, regardless of who they book with, regardless if they're going back to their third party, they know they have that awareness. That's super important.
All right, today's growth story revolves around search engine marketing, and we'll be shining the spotlight on Aegis Software, a company that makes software for manufacturing operations. Aegis was one of the first companies in their space to invest in search marketing, but as competition grew, their performance plateaued. To counter this, they hired Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. With unparalleled experience in inbound lead gen for B2B companies, Directive was able to increase Aegis's monthly online leads by 457%, while at the same time lowering their cost per lead by 147%. Now, I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
Yeah, I think no matter the market that you serve, whatever industry that you're in, whether you sell through third parties or you have, kind of natural referral partners, for all of us, I think there are some sort of natural activators out there in the market that you can go to. I think, there are definitely some challenges along with the opportunity because they have the audience already that you're trying to reach, right? But if you're selling a new product to a new demographic, there's challenges. If you're doing that through an intermediary, there's that much more to overcome. But sometimes that challenge is worth the reward. I want to dig into something you mentioned there, Shirnett, talking about some of the testing. Anything that you can share with us in trying to reach this new demographic of millennials and Gen Xers that surprised you? A channel that you thought, man, this is going to be it. This is going to be a big driver of awareness that fell flat, or something that actually ended up being a big driver that you didn't see coming, and it was fourth, fifth, sixth down the list. But after some other things, you've found some secret sauce in this channel or with this specific strategy. Anything in the testing there that surprised you guys?
I would say, early on, we had some really great opportunities to get a lot of eyeballs on our brand in a really broad and big way. So to give you an example, early on in our journey, we had the opportunity to be on The Bachelor. So I think everybody knows The Bachelor, right? And we thought, oh, this is fantastic. We're going to get in front of millions and millions of eyeballs. I think we had a good 10 full minutes of airtime or footage on the show, which is pretty fantastic given how many eyeballs are on there. So, we early on, we had a few opportunities like this where we just thought, oh, this is going to be it. And I think what we quickly realized is while those are great, at the end of the day, it's just that sustained, it doesn't need to be the big wows. We really tightened up our strategy and really tried to quickly identify where, we didn't have to be all things to all people. We don't have to do these big national wow moments. Let's pick a few key markets that we know where we have the highest concentration of the audience we're going after, and consistently and steadily just continue to get in front of them with frequency. So we really changed our strategy in that rather than looking for those big wow moments, I'd rather pick 4 or 5 key markets and just consistently go after them day after day, week after week, month after month, and just chip away. That seems to be working a lot harder for us, and it's a lot less expensive. So I think that's, the wow moments are sexy, but they aren't necessarily effective. So for us, it's just really tightening our target, tightening our demographic, and just being really consistent. So I think that's key. And then again, going back to the listen, learn, adapt, right? We also have really, after our first 2 seasons of cruising, looking at who are the people who are actually booking this product. Who are they, and how do they consume media and how do they consume information? And we found there were audiences that we weren't necessarily going after, but that we probably should be. And so that was really good. So just adapting. A great example is for us, for the cruises, we're going after the millennials and Gen Xers. One of the groups we hadn't thought about is, what about the millennials that are doing trips with their parents, right? Or the younger millennials. So someone who's like 20 and they're taking a trip with their parents who are 50, and they all want to just go and have a good time, and it's fun for that 20-year-old because it's the right product for them, but it's also fun for the 50-year-old. And that was an audience we weren't thinking about, but there's a lot of those adult children with their adult parents having fun trips together. And why shouldn't we go after those? So I think that's also just paying attention, staying on top of it, and being able to optimize and adapt quickly.
Yeah, there are some great things you just said there, Shirnett. I think for B2B marketers listening to this, thinking about, you talk about the family unit and the folks who might not be the final decision maker who fit that target persona that you're talking about, or is, pinned up everywhere in your marketing area, but they may be influencing decisions as well. I think there's some carryover there. And then the other thing that you mentioned, a correlation to what we talk about day in and day out with other marketers, is podcasting. And I see a lot of people, get so hung up on the audio quality just has to be amazing. If it's not NPR style narrative, long form, with 1,000 cuts, and it doesn't just absolutely wow people, then it's not going to deliver any results. And kind of similar to what you're talking about there, are the big national media moments versus being consistent to the right audience. We see consistency in podcasting as being a much stronger lever to success than necessarily just the wow factor in a podcast that doesn't have the longevity. So in an entirely different market, entirely different service, I'm seeing truth in what you're saying as it plays out in an entirely different area. What are some of the things that you recommend to other marketers, Shirnett, in measuring that brand lift? Because I talk to marketers every day, and there seems to be this tension between demand generation and brand awareness, that you need to have both, but measuring the brand side of things comes with a lot of challenges. Since you guys were very brand focused in making this shift, any advice to folks out there on how you've tactically measured that brand awareness and that brand lift going into a new market?
Yeah, it's a good question. So my first answer is that I have a few answers. My first answer is manage up, because typically, and I say that in the nicest way possible. And what I mean by that is, I've been in marketing for over 20 years, and this is to this day, and for 20 years ago, it's always been the challenge. Any real high funnel, broad brand awareness, it's hard to track. And you have to manage that expectation, I think, internally, and the people who are paying the bills and giving you your marketing dollars, that, hey, listen, I'm about to invest this much money into brand awareness, and we're not necessarily going to be able to track it back to what I'm doing. And, so part of it's just managing expectation internally and helping the people you work with realize that, that especially in a performance demand generation world we live in, where you can track so many things online, that sometimes the things to build awareness, you just can't do that. So I think that's part of it, is just managing expectation. The other part of it too is just, I work really hard with my teams. I've got an amazing team here that I work with, and everyone's managing a different part of the consumer journey, a part of the funnel, a part of the B2B journey. And so part of it is just bringing all those people together and making sure that we're working together to bring together all of our final kind of stats and seeing how they play off one another. So, while I don't do this for you, River Cruises, because it's not the best way to spend money for that brand, for Uniworld, we do some, for instance, national cable ad buys. That's very much high funnel brand awareness, where I can't track that. But what I can track is all the people who are then searching for my brand on, Google or AdWords. So, it's understanding those connections of, while you may not see someone coming directly from a high funnel ad spot that you're running, you can see an uplift in traffic to your website. You can see an uplift in searches for your brand terms. So, but to do that, you got to pull all the pieces of the puzzle together and work together with all those groups. You can't have your brand awareness done in a silo from your mid funnel and your low funnel marketing tactics. You got to make sure that you're working together. I have different teams that work on that. It's my responsibility to bring them together, have them talk, have them communicate, have them look at stats together, and you can kind of tell a bigger story when you do it that way.
That is such good advice there, Shirnett. Anything else as you think about what you guys have been through in going after a new market? I think you've offered some very tactical things, thinking about the personality of the brand, measuring awareness, connecting that to your demand gen strategies, and not doing any of this in a silo, and also not getting stuck with, this one buyer persona in mind, but adapting as you learn about who actually are your buyers over time. Anything else you want to add on this topic before we close things out today?
I think probably just, I would probably just say three things. For us, obviously if you're entering a market, making sure that there's a need for it or a space for it. So that was number one for us. There was absolutely an opportunity. It was untapped. So that puts us an advantage to begin with. Number two, we wouldn't be where we are today with U River Cruises if we didn't constantly stay on top of what we're learning and adapt and optimize quickly. You can't, if you're going to do something where you're entering a new market, it takes time. If you think of a startup, which I oftentimes try to also think of this brand as a startup, even though we're a 40-something plus year old company.
I love it.
We have to think of it that way, which oftentimes startups, they're not necessarily successful for the first 5 years or so, right? But you have to approach it like a startup where you just have to keep hammering, learn, optimize, never take your eyes off of it. You can't just set it and forget it. It's too infant as a brand, as a product. And so it's our responsibility to stay on top of it and have a team that can quickly change and move and, not get stuck doing things one way. Because I think these first 5 years are crucial to just kind of getting it right. It's not perfect out the gate. And if you don't change and get it right, then it will never be right. So I think it's just having that ability and that mindset that you got to stay on top of it, stay with it, keep changing. And I think, and I'll go in my third thing I'm going to say, and I think this goes to our actual brand itself. And this is what I pulled from my time at Virgin is never be afraid to take risks. I remember Richard Branson, I believe that he would say, it was a quote about what's the worst that could happen. What's the worst could happen if you do it, and it's what's the worst that happen if you don't. And just not being afraid to just take a risk. And what I love the most about U River Cruises is this brand is just so unconventional and modern and cool. And there's so many cool things about it. And we've done really unconventional things and we've not been afraid to take risks. And so I think that's also, if you're going to, do this and really make a change an industry, bring something new, you can't be afraid. You can't let fear get in the way. If you believe in it, you just got to go for it. And we believe in it. We love this product. So it's exciting for us to be a part of helping it grow and helping build it and getting that energy behind everyone else, again, who's also selling it for you. So back to the B2B, make sure that energy and enthusiasm carries on. It's really hard to do that too, and to bring that excitement to them about this brand. And I think that definitely helps.
I love the passion you have for it and the way that you've broken down some of the lessons learned along your journey today, Shirnett. If anybody listening to this would like to follow up with you or stay connected with you, a fellow marketer, what's the best way for them to reach out, stay connected with you, or learn more about U River Cruises or Uniworld?
Yeah. So I think the best thing, first, we'd love to have you check out U River Cruises. You can go to our website is by uniworld.com. Uniworld.com. If you want to check out some of our great social content, you can also look at our hashtag travel for you. Again, that's the letter U, travel for you. And my name is Shirnett, and you can always find me on LinkedIn if you need to connect or have a question for me. And I appreciate you giving me the time today to talk about this.
Absolutely. This was a fun conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Shirnett.
Thank you as well. Have a great day.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.